Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Whispers. I awake before dawn, the shrill buzz of the alarm dragging me from dreams where everything is right. My body protests the early hour, but I've learned to move on autopilot. Slip into pressed trousers, lace up polished shoes, and belt on my worn leather briefcase before the house stirs. My breath still hangs in the cool air as I kiss my sleeping daughter's forehead and brush my wife's hair back before slipping out the door. I love this family more than anything, and every sacrifice I make, long hours at the office, weekend reports, missed soccer games, feels worth it when I picture their faces. By the time the city awakens, I'm on the train, phone buzzing with calendar alerts. Meetings begin at 8, networking lunches follow, and by 7 each evening I'm back on the platform, eyes rigid with fatigue. I brag to my colleagues about the promotion coming soon. Just a quarter more in revenue, one last big contract, and the corner office will be mine. That trophy will lift my family's comfort to another level. College tuition plans funded, a nicer neighborhood, the freedom to breathe without the constant worry about bills. For the first few months, everything hums along the way I like it. My wife texts me midday. "Love you. Can't wait for date night." She reminds me of dinner reservations each Friday, sends sweet photos of our daughter's latest drawing. I picture her at home, her soft laughter echoing through our tidy kitchen, her busy hands preparing our life. In those snapshots, she's the partner I married, the co-dreamer who understood that marriage is a ledger of love. Deposit trust, withdraw forgiveness, cultivate hope. But then, small tremors begin to ripple through our routine, subtle enough I almost ignore them. One Tuesday, I phone to confirm she'll pick me up at 6, our usual drive, playlists airing family favorites. No answer. I text, "Everything okay?" An hour passes. My wife calls at 7:15, voice clipped. "Sorry, work ran late. I'll meet you at home." I shrug it off. New project at her office. Maybe she's volunteering after hours. We're both busy. We both make sacrifices. 2 nights later, I leave my phone on the kitchen counter, an insult to my own paranoia, and walk into our living room. I notice her purse left open on the couch. The wallet is there, but her keys aren't. I think nothing of it until I see the unfamiliar phone, slim, black, screen dark. I've never seen it before. I slip it aside and hurry out, reassured that I must have left it at her office. That weekend, I arrive home early from a Saturday sales conference, expecting to surprise her with coffee. The front door is unlocked, lights low. I step in and freeze. Documents scattered across our kitchen table, coffee mug half empty, a pair of white earbuds dangling from the laptop. I announce myself, but the only answer is clammy silence. The living room is empty. No wife, no daughter, just an echo. I leave a note. "Hope everything's okay. Call me." Then I circle the block in my car, heart hammering, until my phone rings around midnight. She's calm, even cheerful. "Busy night with the girls. Sorry I worried you." I force a laugh that sounds brittle. "Okay, see you tomorrow." I hang up and stare at the note on the dash, but the question keeps spinning. Why would she go out with friends and not tell me? By Monday, the oddities multiply. At breakfast, I notice the glitter of lipstick on her coffee cup rim. She swears it's from a work event. Then I find an entry in her shared calendar. "Dinner W. Kate." No date or time. I ask about it over toast. She shrugs. "Just a quick catch-up. You know how it is." I do know. Still, something in her eyes flickers when she says it. Guilt or fear, I can't tell. On the ride to work, I watch her face in the rearview mirror. She's wearing the same blouse she left the house in last week, worn at the collar. She tucks a stray hair behind her ear. She glances down at her phone, then into my eyes. "You sure you're all right?" she asks. My voice catches. "I'm just tired." She gives me a sad smile. "Me too."
In my office, I pour coffee and dive into spreadsheets, but her absence hovers at the back of my mind. Every ping of an email, every unread message, feels like a puzzle piece drifting on an empty sea. I find myself replaying dinner conversations in my head, the ways she described a delightful new friend, how her voice softened when she mentioned college reunions. Why had she never invited me to one? That afternoon, I check our shared GPS app, a cautious habit I swore I'd stop, but it shows her phone pinging at an address I don't recognize. A cul-de-sac of neat suburban homes, far from her office or any coffee shop. I shake my head, convincing myself it's a mistake. She must have driven my car, she must have had her reasons. But when I call her, she says she's still at her desk, finishing reports. I hear the click as she hangs up. My heart lurches. That night, I lie in bed listening to the whir of our ceiling fan. I close my eyes and feel the press of her back against mine. An illusion so vivid, I almost reach out. But my hand settles on empty sheets. Somewhere inside me, a switch flips. Suspicion. Like a spark to dried tinder, it grows until I can't ignore it anymore. Over the next week, I begin keeping my phone on the kitchen table, watchful, alert. When she says she's visiting her mother, I ask for a photo. The hospital wing, the front door, anything. She texts me a hallway snapshot that looks convincingly real, but something about the angle feels staged. My chest tightens. That night, after she kisses me goodnight and retreats to say a prayer for our daughter, I wait until the sound of her steps fades. I slip from the house and drive to the address where her phone pinged.
I park 10 houses down. My pulse thuds in my ears. I scan windows as dusk settles. Inside the third house, a light pulses. I creep closer, watch shadows move behind curtains. A man's silhouette appears, tall, broad. My wife's hand rests on his chest. I squint against the window's glare. Not work friends, not college buddies. My chest tightens so hard I can't swallow. I watch until the light goes out, then drive home with the engine off, heart pounding, trembling. Back in our bedroom, she's asleep, hair spilled on the pillow. I lie beside her, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what I've seen. My love for her warps into something else, hurt, rage, confusion. I drift into a restless sleep, the image of that silhouette burned behind my eyelids. When morning comes, I wake with cement in my chest. I make coffee, pack my lunch, and catch her in the hallway. She hugs me. I force a half smile. "Rough night?" she asks. I nod, swallow hard. "Just had a weird dream." She strokes my arm. "Come to bed early tonight?" I close my eyes and feel her warmth. Innocent or tainted, I can't decide. On my commute, I wrestle with the thought, is this stress, paranoia, or truth knocking on the door? My rational mind says I need proof, something concrete beyond shadows behind curtains. But my heart wants to charge in like a bull, tear down every lie, demand justice. The battle begins. Do I give her a chance to explain, or do I let suspicion guide me into darker territory? At my desk, I tell myself to focus on the quarterly report, but my eyes keep drifting to the clock. Every minute stretches into a question, what if I'm wrong? What if she is hiding something? The questions shift my world off its axis. The grind of work no longer numbs the ache, it sharpens it. That night, I sit alone in the living room, phone in hand, planning my next steps. Gathering evidence makes me feel like a detective in my own life. Part of me wants to confront her tomorrow, demand the truth. Another part whispers of revenge. Mirror her betrayal. Let her taste the sting of infidelity. But I'm my own man. I owe my family more than blind rage. Sleep eludes me again. My mind swirls with possibilities. Hire a private investigator. Plant a tracking device. Follow her after dinner. My love for her fights with my wounded pride. I'm caught between mercy and retribution. By dawn, I've made no decision. The alarm berths me awake again, and I rise, battered and uncertain, to face another day of work and suspicion. The spark in my chest refuses to die out. It flickers with every text message, every unanswered call. The foundation I built on trust is cracking, and I'm not sure whether to mend it or watch it shatter entirely. In the hush before the world awakes, I vow to uncover the truth, whatever it takes. And when that truth comes, I'll have to decide whether I'm a man who forgives or a man bent on righteous revenge. For now, I hold on to one certainty. Nothing will ever be the same again.
I didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, I lay on the edge of our bed, staring at the ceiling fan's spinning blur, replaying that silhouette behind the curtain. Morning light found me tense, restless. I showered, shaved, and dressed in my usual pinstripe suit, but my thoughts were miles away, hungrily circling every unanswered question. At breakfast, I forced a smile, loaded toast with butter, sipped black coffee, and watched my wife glide around the kitchen, humming as she packed our daughter's lunch. I played the doting husband. I kissed her cheek, complimented her new perfume, but my heart pounded like a war drum. Once I grabbed my briefcase and slipped out the door, another battle began. Gathering proof. I needed facts, not suspicion. If I confronted her without evidence, I risked looking insane, and she would draw back behind a wall of tears and gaslighting. This had to be airtight. I opened my work laptop, an expensive MacBook Pro connected to the office VPN, and Googled "private investigator near me," under cover of early morning emails. Half a dozen results popped up. Small firms promising discreet surveillance, instant phone forensics, social media investigations. I flagged 3 to call later, but I hesitated. Those services cost thousands. Was I ready to spend that kind of money? On the train into the city, I tapped out a list of everything I'd noticed: the unexplained nights out, the extra phone tucked in her purse, the calendar entry for dinner with Kate. I added items as they came: smudged lipstick on her coffee cup, her reluctance to share photos of her outings, weird summer emails from an address I didn't recognize. At the top of the list, I scribbled in all caps, "Find X's name." I remembered her passing mention of Brandon, her college boyfriend, 5 years ago. I wondered if he'd returned. By mid-morning, I had a plan. First, I'd gain access to her texts. My wife's iPhone was locked behind a passcode, but she tended to leave it unattended, dropping it on the counter, forgetting to lock it after a call. If I could swipe it, I could see the messages. I waited until lunch hour. My office sat on the 15th floor. A staffed cafeteria buzzed below. I texted her, "Saw your text pop up. Everything okay?" No reply. That was promising. It meant my message hung unanswered while she was out.
I slipped out early, claiming a midday errand. In her office lobby, I told security I needed to drop off some documents she'd requested. They buzzed me through. I walked straight to her desk. Her coat hung on the back of her chair, and her iPhone lay face up beside a photo screensaver of our daughter. My pulse quickened as I grabbed it and punched in 4 digits she often used: birthdays, anniversaries. The third try unlocked it. Inside, I found dozens of unread texts from a contact saved as B, bold, generic. The preview read, "Miss you tonight, and can't wait to see you." My hands shook as I tapped the thread. It opened to a string of flirtatious messages. "That dress was amazing. I love our midnight talks." I scrolled further. "I'll pick you up at 8. Be alone. Be alone." My vision narrowed. She'd been hiding this. As I read, guilt knotted my stomach. Violation of trust fueling my betrayal. But I rationalized. This was justice. She'd wanted secrecy. Now I'd gather proof. I snapped screenshots of the texts, careful to censor anything that might identify me if the media ever saw it. Then I swapped the SIM from her phone into an old Galaxy I kept in my desk drawer. This would forward all her new messages so I wouldn't have to keep checking her real device. With digital breadcrumbs secured, I turned to physical evidence. I called one of the investigators, an outfit called Sentinel Surveillance. The receptionist asked a few questions: license plate number of my wife's car, typical routes, her work schedule, the name and address of her friend's house. I confirmed that I would handle billing discreetly.
One call on a burner phone, one wire transfer from a new account. They promised to check her movements for the next week.
Next on my list, credit card statements. I logged into our joint online banking with my credentials and navigated to our account tab. There it was, a $220 charge at the Velvet Lounge, dated last Saturday at 11 p.m. I'd never heard of that bar. I clicked the merchant link. It described a speakeasy in the East Village. There was also a $95 charge for Uber, 2 trips, one at 7:45 p.m., another at 2:10 a.m. I printed screenshots, highlighted the dates, and added sticky notes. Explain. My last avenue was social media. I scrolled through her Facebook feed but saw nothing unusual. Vacation photos, brunch selfies, sponsored posts. Then I remembered the ex's name, Brandon Parker. I typed Brandon Parker East Village into Instagram. 3 profiles appeared. 2 were DJs and photographers with no connection. The third was a private account, nearly bare, only 5 posts, all tagged at the Velvet Lounge. The most recent dated 2 nights ago, a dimly lit photo of a couple's shadows on a brick wall, captioned, "Miss us." My breath caught. I tapped follow. The request sat at pending. I switched to Twitter. Her ex's name brought up a handle that tweeted about live music in Brooklyn. He followed 20 people, my wife included, I discovered. Their Twitter exchange was succinct. "Looking forward to tonight," she tweeted. He replied, "Me too," smiley face. Nothing else. But it was enough. I compiled the evidence. Screenshots of B's texts, credit card charges, social media snippets, Uber pickups, the ex's ID. I saved them to an encrypted folder on my laptop, zipped and password protected. Each bullet point felt like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. That night, I printed copies. I taped them to the kitchen counter, labeling each with a red marker. Bar receipt, Velvet Lounge. Uber receipts, 2 rides. Text messages, X, B. I spread them like evidence in a detective's board. My wife walked in, paused, eyes widening at the display.
Her mouth fell open. What is all this? I stood behind the counter, arms crossed over my chest, an unspoken ultimatum. My heart hammered like a wild animal, but I kept my voice steady. Explain. Her eyes darted to each printout. She inhaled and exhaled. The guilt in her gaze was unmistakable. For the first time in days, I saw her tremble. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Tears formed at the corners of her eyes. She started, then paused, her lips quivering. She ran her fingers through her hair, looked away. My chest tightened. I waited for her to continue. Time stretched. Finally, she whispered, "It's not what you think." I felt a surge of anger and pity. Then help me understand. Who is B? Why are you meeting him at midnight? Why did you hide this? She swallowed hard. His name is Brandon. He's my ex from college. We ran into each other at a reunion 2 months ago. He reached out. We had coffee once. That's it. I swear I didn't. I raised a hand, silencing her. Coffee at midnight? I asked, voice low. She winced. There was an event. Work took me late. My gaze dropped to the printed Uber receipt. This charge shows you left your office at 11:15 p.m. She looked stricken. I'm sorry. Why didn't you tell me? Tears pooled in her eyes. She shook her head. I didn't want to worry you. You're under so much pressure with work. I thought I could handle it on my own. Handle it? I echoed, hurt lacing each word. With him? She blinked. I never slept with him. It was a mistake to meet him again. A stupid mistake. Her words landed, but I wasn't convinced. The texts were too intimate. I can't stop thinking about you. Your kiss still haunts me. She slumped and brushed at her eyes. Those are old messages. I never meant to send them. I was upset, lonely, and I texted him after a fight with you. I didn't even go to his apartment. My head spun with a dozen questions. Which messages are old?
Why did you delete so many texts? How many nights did you lie? But I forced myself to ask the one that mattered most. Too much evidence, not enough truth. I want the truth, I said. All of it. Her shoulders shook, and she nodded, as if preparing for a confession. I will tell you everything. I promise. I watched her retreat to the living room, her stride awkward with shame. My phone, guttering on the counter, buzzed with an email notification from Sentinel Surveillance. Your request has been scheduled. First report arrives at 8 p.m. I exhaled. The net was closing.
As I gathered the printouts and stashed them in a folder, I realized that uncovering her secrets was only part of the journey. What I did with those secrets, confrontation, revenge, forgiveness, would define us both. Over dinner, she spoke haltingly, revealing details, how she'd reconnected with Brandon at a charity gala, how they'd talked late into the night about old times, how she'd agreed to one meeting that spiraled into two. She insisted their encounters remained innocent, just conversation, laughter, nostalgia. But something had shifted, and she hadn't known how to stop. I listened, alternating between anger and compassion. When she finished, I excused myself and went for a walk to digest her words. The night air was cool, the city lights blurred behind my watery eyes. I felt both vindicated and hollow. I'd found the evidence. Now I faced a choice: demand retribution or seek understanding. My phone pinged again. Surveillance's first update was here. I turned it off. Tonight, I'd sleep on this. Tomorrow, I'd sift through what I knew and decide what came next: confrontation, revenge, or an attempt at repair. All I was certain of was that my life had changed. The ledger of our marriage had come undone, and we both held the pen to rewrite it. For now, I tucked the folder under my arm and walked back home into a future I no longer recognized. The moment I stepped through the front door, I sensed an unspoken tension hanging in the air. The house was too quiet. No laughter from our daughter, no music, just the hum of the refrigerator. My wife was in the living room, seated on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. On the coffee table before her lay the printouts and screenshots I'd organized the night before, each one a damning piece of evidence. I closed the door behind me without a word. Her eyes flicked up, red-rimmed. She swallowed, and I heard the dry rasp of her throat. My heart hammered with every step across the plush rug. When I stood in front of the table, I let my gaze linger on the top sheet, the Tinder-like app screenshot of her ex's profile, marked Brandon Parker. "Do you want to explain this?" My voice felt low, controlled, but inside I was roiling. She inhaled, blinked away tears. "It's not what you think," she whispered, voice shaking. She glanced down at her hands. "Please don't hate me." I felt a flicker of pity, enough to catch her eye, but pity didn't excuse betrayal. I knelt, sliding a printout of her midnight Uber receipts across the coffee table. "You tell me what happened here." She closed her eyes and exhaled shakily. "I shouldn't have gone," she said, voice small. "I felt lonely, and when Brandon reached out, it felt familiar. We met for coffee. We talked. I didn't plan to meet him again, but I did."
I forced myself to hold her gaze. "And what did you talk about at 1 in the morning?" Her lip trembled. "Old memories. The past. College. I thought it would help me remember who I was before things got so hard." I stood up, anger and hurt colliding. "So you lied about kiddie parties and work events so you could sleep with him?" Her head snapped up in disbelief. "I didn't sleep with him," she protested. "I swear I didn't." I cut her off, voice rising. "Then how do you explain these texts?" I tapped the printout of her phone screenshots. "I can't stop thinking about you. Your kiss still haunts me. Those aren't friendship messages." Her shoulders shook as she exhaled. "I was angry after our fight last week. You were so distant, always at work, always tired. I texted him. He made me feel seen again." I closed my eyes, fighting back the sting of tears. I imagined her in his arms while I sat in my cubicle, imagining her laughter for my next sales pitch. "You used him to feel wanted," I said quietly. "You used me to pay for your comfort." She flinched. "Stop. You're twisting my words." Twisting my own words? I felt a wave of confusion. Was I the villain in her version of events? My pulse pounded as I realized how far we'd drifted. "Do you even love me anymore?" I asked, my voice cracking. I reached for the screen displaying the social media exchange. Brandon's tweet, "Me too," after she tweeted, "Looking forward to tonight." She stared at it as if seeing it for the first time. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you," she said, voice thick. "I made a terrible mistake. I never meant to hurt you." "I'm not so sure," I whispered, voice hollow. "Mistakes happen once. You kept going back." Her tears flowed freely. She rubbed her palms over her face. "It didn't mean anything. I didn't act on it. I know it looks bad, but we didn't sleep together." I exhaled through clenched teeth. "I believe you, or I want to. But right now, I feel shattered. I don't know how to trust you." She rose and stepped toward me. "Let me prove it. I'll give you my phone. Read every message. I'll delete nothing. I'll do whatever it takes." I hesitated. Part of me craved transparency, proof that she'd stopped. But another part wanted to punish her, to mirror her pain. I found myself at a moral crossroads. Could I demand she pay in kind? Or was love worth salvaging? "I need time," I said. My voice was rough. I turned away. "Don't follow me into the bedroom tonight." She nodded, tears glistening. "I understand." I climbed the stairs without looking back. In our bedroom, I slammed the door and lay on my side of the bed, arms wrapped around my chest. I stared at the ceiling fan, mind whirling with the raw confession I'd just heard and the countless lies she'd told. Sleep was impossible. The sting of betrayal gnawed at me. Thoughts tumbled. Should I sleep with someone else to make her feel the same pain? Would that prove a point or destroy me? Each idea rippled with consequences, lost respect, fractured conscience, untold regrets.
At 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed, grabbed my phone and scrolled to the screenshots. The images scrolled endlessly. The texts, the Uber receipts, the credit card charges. I tapped one, her confirmation, "I can't wait to see you," and stared at it until the screen blurred. I realized that revenge was a seductive poison. It promised righteous satisfaction, but delivered only emptiness. If I betrayed her as she'd betrayed me, I'd sabotage any chance of reconciliation. Worse, I'd lose myself. By dawn, I had a decision. I would not mirror her betrayal. Instead, I would insist on the truth, rebuild trust with transparent boundaries, and seek professional help, couples therapy if necessary. Yet I couldn't let her forget how deeply she'd wounded me. When she knocked on the bedroom door that morning, I opened it on the latch. She looked fragile, pleading. I let her in and held her close. Her tears soaked my shirt. "I don't know if we'll ever be the same," I said softly, "but I want to try. On one condition. Complete honesty. No more secrets. Yours or mine." She rested her head on my chest. "I promise." I closed my eyes, feeling the steady rise and fall of her breath. The foundation of our marriage had cracked, but in that fragile space, I sensed a faint pulse of possibility. Trust would have to be rebuilt plank by plank, word by word. As sunlight crept through the curtains, I resolved. I would pursue justice, not vengeance. I would gather the proof I needed to keep her accountable, but I would channel my anger into healing, not retaliation. And if she wavered again, I would walk away, because forgiveness is a gift, not an obligation. For now, we stood at the edge of a new day, shaken, uncertain, and raw. But together, we would attempt what we once vowed, to weather storms, confront storms, and, if we were brave enough, emerge stronger on the other side. That afternoon, I found myself staring at the evidence board in our guest room, each printout now yellowed at the corners from anxious fingertips, the photos of Brandon's silhouette, the Uber receipts stamped with times that screamed betrayal, the tender, loaded texts she'd sent at dead hours. I paced the room in my suit and tie, the weight of my own moral compass swinging me between two poles, understanding and retribution.
On the one hand, I'd tasted what vengeance might feel like, the power of exposing her in front of the world, the thrill of knowing I could make her suffer as I had. I'd glimpsed it in the logic of mirroring her affair. I could seek out another woman, let her experience the ache of infidelity, and then drop the revelation on her like a guillotine's blade. Justice, cold and satisfying. But every time I considered that path, a new pang of guilt would tighten around my ribs. I thought of our daughter's bright eyes, the way she greeted each morning with a giggle. Was I prepared to shatter her world too? The memory of my wife's tears after the confrontation haunted me, raw sorrow beneath guilt. To punish her with my own infidelity felt dangerously close to destroying the fragile repair we'd vowed to attempt. Still, temptation held me in its grip. That night I joined an online forum under a pseudonym, Seeking My Own, where men anonymously traded stories of betrayal and revenge. Their accounts were vivid: the clandestine bar hookups, the searing pleasure of return texts, the cagey satisfaction as the betrayed spouse finally realized they'd been repaid in kind. I read each confession like a drug, my heart racing. One member, Silent Judgment, wrote, "She cheated with her ex. I cheated with his sister. When I came home, her face said it all. It wasn't cruel, it was poetic." I felt my blood stir. I pictured walking into our bedroom after a night spent with someone else, her world tumbling. Poetic justice, I muttered. The idea lodged in my mind, fast and painful. The next morning, I met a friend for coffee, a single mother I'd known through my daughter's kindergarten. She listened sympathetically as I spilled the barest outlines of my anguish. She offered what she called emotional therapy, an arrangement where I'd meet a confidant on Wednesday evenings. Nothing serious, just a caring presence. She promised discretion and understanding, no questions asked the next day. Part of me balked. The proposal felt like a trap, a pied-à-terre of regret. But the other part, hurt, wounded, desperate, yearned for something to remind me I still mattered. I agreed to meet her next Wednesday. Even as I nodded, a cold whisper in my mind asked, "Will this teach her a lesson or only deepen your scar?" All that week I wrestled with anticipation. I'd made the arrangement in hushed messages, name, time, place. The woman, let's call her Rachel, sent me her favorite bistro address for Wednesday at 8 p.m. My stomach churned with nerves and excitement. I rehearsed my opening lines. "I've been through hell, and I need to feel wanted again." On Tuesday, my wife approached me as I was reviewing a client's account. She touched my arm, a gentle weight of tenderness. "I know this has been hard. I want us to have date night tomorrow, just the two of us. Dinner at the place where we had our first date." She looked hopeful. Relief and guilt tangled in my chest. I forced a smile and said, "I'd like that."
I left the office early that night, heart heavy with the unspoken secret. I rehearsed the lie. Traffic was terrible, ran late. I thought of canceling with Rachel, but knew if I did, I'd wake at 3 a.m. still thinking about it. The urge to see if I could reclaim my dignity by letting someone else see me as worth pursuing was too strong. Wednesday came in a blur of meetings and emails. By 7 p.m. I was back home, showered, shaved, wearing a dark blazer over a soft sweater. Smart enough for dinner, unbuttoned enough to seem relaxed. My wife arrived home moments later, framed by the hallway's warm light. She wore the dress I'd gifted her last Christmas, the one I'd always loved. My heart ached at the sight. She looked hopeful, trusting, unaware. She kissed me lightly on the lips and said, "Ready?" I nodded and watched her lead me out the door. Down the street from our home, our car pulled away from the curb. She turned to smile at me, her hand resting on my thigh. Guilt slammed into me, raw and bright. Each second felt like a lie fastened to the steering wheel. At the corner diner, she parked in front of a curb I rarely used. I stopped her before she could turn off the engine. "I have to tell you something." My voice trembled. She paused, eyebrows knitting. I opened the passenger door. "I can't do this tonight." Her face went white. "What do you mean?" "I'm not ready," I fumbled. "I need more time." Her eyes filled with panic. "What's wrong? Please, talk to me."
I opened my mouth, but the next words choked me. "I'm sorry." I shut the door and watched her gather keys and purse. She stared at me with shock, hurt, and desperation. Without another word, she climbed out, walked to the curb, and waited. I drove away, not to the bistro, but to Rachel's texted address, a loft bar near the waterfront. I parked in a shadowed lot, heart pounding so hard I thought it might betray me. Steeling myself, I crossed the street. Each step felt heavy, leaden. I reached the glass door and used the code she'd sent, 942. The host nodded. I slid into a velvet booth as Rachel approached, hair soft, eyes sympathetic. She hugged me without question. "It's going to be okay," she whispered. We talked, laughed, drank wine. For a few hours, I was just a man being listened to. She traced the line of my jaw, leaned in as I spoke. I felt genuine warmth behind her attentiveness. No hidden files, no printouts, no betrayal. I felt seen again. But between laughs, guilt flickered. I pictured my wife waiting by the car. I realized I was the betrayer in this story now, and that she'd never warranted this pain. I excused myself to the restroom and stared at my reflection in a smoky mirror. The lines under my eyes had deepened. The man staring back seemed older, warier. I returned to the table. Rachel reached for my hand. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "I can't do this." I stood, paid the tab, and left her with a confession. "I'm not searching for justice. I'm just lost." I walked out into the night, alone. As I drove home through quiet streets, the weight of what I'd attempted pressed down on me. I'd almost traded my honor for a fleeting sense of value. I'd almost dealt the same blow she gave me, oblivious to the self-destruction beneath. When I pulled into our driveway, I found her standing on the porch, arms crossed against the cold. Her eyes glimmered in the porch light, worry, fear, love intertwined. I turned off the ignition and climbed out. She ran to me, wrapped her arms around my waist. "I was so scared," she whispered, burying her face in my coat. I hugged her, feeling the sturdy weight of her body, the familiar rhythm of her heartbeat. Tears stung my eyes. "I'm sorry," I said, over and over. "I'm so sorry." We stood there, two flawed humans beneath the street lamp, wounded but still clinging to each other. I knew the path ahead would be treacherous. Temptations and doubts would come again. But in that moment, I chose a different kind of justice, compassion. As I walked us inside and locked the door behind us, I felt the first true flicker of hope. The ledger of our marriage had been unbalanced by betrayal, but love could be the deposit that tipped it back. The temptation to punish was still a whisper in the dark, but for tonight, we would rest in renewal. I told myself I would not cross that line. I swore I'd channel my anger into rebuilding trust rather than mirroring her betrayal. And yet, when the next Tuesday rolled around, rain pounding the windshield, fluorescent lights flickering in the bar's parking lot, I found my pulse thrumming with a singular purpose. I needed her to feel what I felt. The sting of desire unmet, the smoke of someone's scent on fresh sheets, the hollow ache that follows a stolen night. I arrived at the rusty anchor just after 8, its neon sign sputtering. Rachel wasn't there. Instead, I'd summoned someone new,
A colleague I barely knew, Anna, a sharp-eyed marketing manager who'd once laughed at my canned jokes during a late meeting. I'd sent her a curt text, no explanations, just time and place, and she'd shown up, coat draped over her arm, heels clicking against the pavement. Her eyes widened as I approached. "Tom?" she said, using my real name for the first time. I swallowed. "Yes. Thank you for coming." I slid into the booth across from her and ordered 2 bourbons. The bar hummed with weekend revelers, the air thick with perfume and laughter. I felt the familiar knot of guilt already knotting my stomach, but I pushed it aside. We talked, small talk at first, work pressures, shared deadlines, half-truths about personal lives. My voice sounded eerily calm. I studied her face, interested, curious, unguarded. After a second drink, I leaned forward. "I want tonight to be real," I said, voice low. "I need to feel alive again."
She glanced at me, mischief dancing in her eyes. "Alive?" she repeated. "After everything?" I nodded. Words tumbled out, how I'd discovered my wife's affair, how I'd nearly walked away from my own marriage, how I felt broken in two. I told her about the prints strewn like evidence, the late-night surveillance, the confrontation that nearly took everything down. My confession was heavy, but Anna listened without judgment. When the clock neared 10, I suggested we get out of there. The rain had let up, leaving the night streets glistening. We walked in silence to the underground parking garage, high ceilings echoing with our footsteps. My chest pounded with anticipation and fear. At her car, Anna turned and pressed her lips against mine, gentle at first, then hungry. The world around us blurred. In her apartment, walls bathed in pale lamplight, we moved together with a strange urgency. Clothes fell to the floor in a crumpled heap. I tasted whiskey on her breath, silk against my skin. For a moment, all I felt was desire, a flash of relief from the months of suspicion and heartbreak. But as she traced my jawline, something inside me recoiled. My hands trembled. The guilt hit like a wave. This wasn't justice. It was the same wound I'd inflicted. I pulled away, heart hammering in my throat. Anna's eyes searched mine. "Tom?" Her voice quivered. I shook my head. "I can't," I whispered, voice cracking. "I'm sorry." I dressed in silence, each button a confession. She stood in socks and a robe, watching me with a mix of confusion and concern. I handed her a crumpled bill for the minibar, payment for a transgression she never agreed to. She nodded slowly, understanding the apology in my eyes more than my words. Driving home at 2 a.m., I replayed the night's fragments, the thrill of being desired, the pit of shame that swallowed me afterward, the sense of betrayal I'd inflicted on myself and on her, my wife, who believed I was at a company event. Each turn of the wheel deepened my regret. Rain slicked the roads, headlights shimmering in puddles the color of my mood. Pulling into our driveway, I saw her silhouette in the window, small, solitary. My phone buzzed with a notification from Sentinel Surveillance. Subject vehicle observed entering the Rusty Anchor at 8:10 p.m. Attached was a grainy still, my reflection in a car window, arm wrapped around a woman's waist. I stared at the image, bile rising. The PI had captured me, the very act I'd hoped to keep secret. Inside the house, her perfume lingered in the hallway. The front door clicked shut behind me. I hung my damp coat on the rack, careful to wipe the raindrops from the shoulders so she wouldn't see. I moved like a specter, haunted by my own reflection in every pane of glass. In the living room, I found her seated at the dining table, reading a book by lamplight. The pages fluttered when she sensed me. She looked up, calm but alert, as though she'd been waiting. My heart lodged in my throat. Without a word, I placed my keys on the table and slid the PI's printout across her reading lamp's light. She glanced at the photo attachment, and I felt her gaze cut straight through me. Then she looked up, eyes wide, not with anger, but something colder. Resignation. "I know what you did," she said softly. My chest tightened. The bourbon's burn had long since faded. Now only shame burned me from the inside. I sank onto the chair opposite her, head bowed. Words wouldn't come. I'd planned every detail to hurt her as I'd been hurt. Instead, I'd ended up shattering my own mirror. She folded the printout, placed it neatly atop the photo. "Revenge doesn't heal," she said. "It perpetuates the cycle." Her voice quavered. "I gave you my promise, complete honesty. You broke yours." The truth landed like a fist. I'd traded betrayal for betrayal, and the ledger lay empty on the table. Two broken people with no clear way back. I opened my mouth to speak, but the weight of my actions silenced me. Her shoulders sagged as she stood. She didn't say goodbye. She simply walked upstairs, the carpet muffling her steps. The creak of her bedroom door was the softest indictment. This time, I was the one left outside. Alone in the dim dining room, I realized that payback had cost me everything. Her trust, her faith, the fragile bond we'd begun to piece together. My phone lay on the table, messages from colleagues asking where I'd been, the PI's next update unread. I realized that some wounds bled only when you strike yourself. I sat there until the rain began again, pattering against the window like the tick of a metronome, reminding me that time still moved forward, whether I wanted it to or not. The night stretched on, empty, a void carved by my own hand. I had executed my revenge, but at what price?
I didn't know how long I sat at the dining table before she came back downstairs. Rain rattled the windows, and the only light was the yellow halo of the lamp over my PI's photo printout. My hand hovered over it, trembling, proof of my own betrayal so stark that it felt like a physical blow to the chest. When she appeared, her hair was damp from the steam in the bathroom, eyes rimmed red but determined. She closed the distance between us without a word. I watched her fold her arms and tilt her head, studying me in silence. The air between us hummed with unspoken anger and grief. Finally, she spoke. "How long were you at that bar?" Her question snapped me out of my daze. I swallowed hard and met her gaze. "A few hours." Her jaw clenched. "Hours." She pointed to the photo. "You think this is just about hours? You think this snapshot captures all the pieces you shattered tonight?" I looked down. I couldn't hold her eyes. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Sorry?" she repeated, voice hollow. "Is that all you have for me?" I closed my eyes. I was wrong. "Wrong?" She laughed then, a bitter sound that cut through me. "Wrong? You cheated, you lied, you tore open the wound you asked me to heal." Her words slammed into me like a steel door. I felt a cold wash of shame. I thought if I made you feel what I felt, you'd understand me." "Understand you?" She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You wanted me to taste betrayal. You wanted me to suffer. But pain doesn't breed understanding. It breeds more pain." I choked on her anger. "I know. I see that now." Her gaze hardened. She slid into the chair beside me and picked up the printout. "This face," she said, voice trembling, "this is the face of someone I nearly forgave, someone I wanted to rebuild with. And now," she tore the paper in half, "now, I don't know if I can." My heart stopped. The jagged edges of the torn photo lay between us. She rose and went into the kitchen. I heard a clatter of dishes. I followed, numb. She filled 2 mugs with hot water and tea bags. Steam curled between us. She handed me a mug with unsteady hands, then placed her own on the counter. I wrapped both hands around the warm mug, letting the heat seep into my fingers. "I wish I could undo it," I said. "I take back every step." "But you didn't," she replied quietly. "You chose this. And when I hurt you, you said you wanted justice. Justice has a cost." Her words echoed in my mind. I realized how little I understood what justice meant, how I'd been drunk on righteous rage. She leaned back against the counter. "We have a daughter," she said softly. "She deserves more than broken promises and shattered trust." I closed my eyes, picturing our daughter's face as she slipped out of bed each morning, her pajamas bunched at the ankles. I imagined her confusion if we split. Every fiber of me ached at the thought of her caught in our wreckage. "I don't want to destroy our family," I said. Her eyes glistened. "Then prove it." I set the mug down with more force than intended. The tea sloshed over the rim. "Tell me what I need to do." She took a deep breath. "I need to see every message, every bank statement, every secret you've ever kept. No more half-truths." I nodded. "Complete transparency. Starting now." She placed her phone on the counter, screen facing up. "I've enabled guest access. Go ahead." My fingers shook as I picked up her device. I handed her mine. "My texts, my emails, open book." We traded phones. For the next hour, we scrolled through each other's messages. For every message I showed, a work update, a meeting reminder, she allowed me to see her side. For every text from B, I watched her delete the ones she insisted were not what they seemed. For every PI update she vetoed, demanding it remain private until she earned back my trust. As we compared logs, a grim camaraderie formed, two people exposing their wounds. We saw late-night work emails side by side with late-night texts. We saw Uber receipts next to ride-sharing for clients. We saw the paranoia in each other's eyes mirrored back. How different our motivations had become, and yet how similar our fears.
When we finally fell silent, I leaned back against the counter, exhaustion pulling at my limbs. She turned her phone face down and exhaled. "Thank you," she said softly. "That was hard." "It was," I agreed. She stepped closer, our shoulders brushing. "But it's honest." We stood in the quiet kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator our only soundtrack. Then she reached for my hand and squeezed it. "Can we try therapy?" she asked. "Get help before we drift so far that there's no coming back?" Tears stung my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "I'll do anything." She nodded. "I'll make the appointment." I exhaled, relief and uncertainty mingling. We let go of each other's hands, rubbing our palms raw from the clasp. That night we sat on the couch and talked, really talked, for the first time in months. She told me about her loneliness, the pressure she felt to keep the marriage perfect. I told her about the hollow ache behind each promotion, the fear that I wasn't enough. We spoke of the future, of trust rebuilt and guardrails set in place. But even as our voices wove hope, I knew we were standing on fragile ground. Forgiveness isn't a switch to flip, it's a long ladder to climb, and some rungs might break beneath us. The next morning, I went to work with a report due by noon. My mind wasn't on the spreadsheet rows or the margin targets. Instead, it churned with lines from our conversation. I realized that choosing to rebuild meant committing to transparency every single day for the rest of our lives. That afternoon, I called Sentinel Surveillance and canceled the remaining hours of investigation. I told them to send the final report to my office address. Then I forwarded the email to my wife with a note, "No secrets, ever." That evening, we attended our first therapy session. We sat on plush chairs, facing a counselor who guided us gently through exercises in active listening and accountability. For an hour, we practiced mirroring each other's words. "What I hear you saying," instead of rebutting. We wrote out our individual commitments.
I will share my work calendar. I will check in every night. I will pause before seeking revenge. When we left the office, rain had eased, leaving sidewalks slick and air fresh. We walked hand in hand to the car, not because everything was fixed, but because we chose a shared path forward. Back home, our daughter greeted us with sleepy eyes and a messy braid. She crawled into my lap, resting her head on my chest. I stroked her hair, feeling the solidity of her small body, a living testament to what mattered most. As I tucked her into bed that night, I whispered, "Daddy and Mommy are going to be okay." She smiled, half asleep, and hugged a blanket. I turned and saw my wife standing in the doorway, eyes hopeful. I took a step toward her, closing the distance. We stood there in the dim hallway, two flawed adults united by a fragile vow to choose love over retribution, honesty over secrecy, and to rebuild what we once almost destroyed. I realized then that true justice in marriage isn't about balance or payback, it's about grace. And grace, like trust, must be earned, one day at a time. In the cold light of the next morning, I awoke beside her and pressed my palm to her back. Warm, steady. I remembered our vow from therapy, no more secrets, no more silent withdrawals from our account of trust. The day ahead felt like uncharted territory, but at least we were walking it together. That evening's check-in came at precisely 7 p.m. I was still tied up in a client call, but I paused, excused myself, and dialed her number. On the video screen, her face lit my phone's dark corner. "I finished early," I lied, voice warm. She smiled. "I knew you would." 10 minutes later, I hung up, my heart lighter. On Friday, we recommitted to date night. We stowed our phones in a locked box she'd bought at the therapy center. Candlelight glowed between us at a small Italian bistro, the one where we'd first confessed love. Our conversation meandered through mundane joys, plans for our daughter's Halloween costume, the neighbor's new puppy, and a renewed interest in painting. No mention of Brandon, no ledger references, just presence. Back at home, I washed the dishes she'd left in the sink, humming her favorite tune. She touched my arm, and for the first time in months, I didn't flinch.
The next Sunday, over coffee and bagels, we held our inaugural finance meeting. I logged into our online portal and shared my screen. Full disclosure. "Here's my expense report," I said, scrolling through week-to-week tabs. No secret dinners, no surprise Uber rides. She blinked back tears. "Thank you for doing this." Then she opened her own statements. I watched as she circled a charge at a home decor shop, an innocuous purchase, and explained why she'd splurged on canvas for her art. We laughed over a $12 mystery latte she'd refused to disclose before. No recriminations, just honest accounting. By the end, our joint budget spreadsheet felt more like a shared canvas than a cold ledger. We color-coded discretionary spending, date night, art supplies, family outings, and drew a small heart next to trust fund to remind ourselves of our progress. Trust rebuilding wasn't linear. 2 weeks later, I saw a tweet from an old colleague tagged with "late-night brainstorming sesh." My chest tightened. I thought of Brandon's tweets and Laura's midnight texts. I closed the app and took a deep breath, reminding myself this was work, not betrayal. That evening, I shared the moment with Laura at our check-in. She listened, eyes soft. "I get why that tweet stung," she said. Then recited her own trigger, a news alert about a college reunion in our town. "I panicked," she admitted. We held hands across the screen, naming our fears so they lost the power to sabotage us. One rainy Saturday morning, we tackled a DIY project on our front porch, staining a new bench where our daughter could draw chalk art. We passed the brush back and forth, our fingers sticky with varnish, laughing when we accidentally splashed each other. By afternoon, we sat side by side on the bench, sipping hot chocolate, feeling literally and figuratively closer. Our renewed intimacy came in these small acts, side-by-side chores, shared playlists on road trips, co-authored grocery lists that ended with "surprise treat for Tom." Trust, I realized, is not merely confessed, it's lived. At our 3-month therapy check-in, our counselor smiled as we recapped our progress. "You've internalized transparency," she said.
Your trust ledger is active again. We admitted our relapses, my social media panic, her fleeting guilt after an unexpected text, but we'd navigated them together.
She assigned us a new exercise. Once a week, prepare a gratitude letter to each other, recounting moments of trust regained. We left the office with new rituals added to our shared calendar: Gratitude Sunday mails and Mindful Monday walk and talks. That weekend, we packed our daughter into the car and drove to a lakeside park. We rented a canoe, or slicing silver water beneath sunrise. Our daughter giggled as we tipped her slightly. She thought it hilarious, while Laura and I exchanged triumphant grins. Later, we shared sandwiches on a picnic blanket, the distant hills whispering lullabies. We spoke of dreams once deferred: Laura's art exhibit in the spring, my plan to launch a small consulting side project. We sketched goals on napkins: family trip to the coast, learn Spanish together, monthly screen-free Sunday. I looked at Laura's face, sunlight on her hair, the contented curve of her smile, and felt my old confidence in us return. Not a naive confidence, but one born of fire and mending. That evening, back home, I updated our joint journal. September 14th, we shared bacon and eggs breakfast, no secrets. Laura painted the door frame sky blue. It brightened the hall. I drove her to her art class, listening to her laugh over spilled paint. We agreed, grace is stronger than revenge. As I closed the journal, I felt the soft hope settle in my chest. Our ledger of trust would never be reset to zero. Each new deposit required diligence. Each misstep sparked conversation, not concealment. In the bathroom mirror, I caught my reflection. Lines around my eyes softened, shoulders no longer tense. I brushed my teeth and felt bravery in the simple act. I returned to the living room, where Laura was curled on the couch with our daughter asleep across her lap. I sat beside them, mindful of not waking our child. I draped an arm around Laura and whispered, "I choose us, every day." She smiled sleepily and nestled closer. The house was still. The path we tread remained fragile, but it was ours to walk, hand in hand, transparent, forgiving, rebuilding a love that had weathered betrayal and emerged, if not unbroken, then stronger in its willingness to forgive. We had learned that true justice in marriage isn't about tit for tat. It's about choosing grace over retribution, empathy over anger, and faith in the promise that two imperfect people can write a new story together. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear from you what moment in your life made you see someone for who they truly were. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to Reddit Whispers, where the real stories get told.